Shenmue was an open-world game for the Sega Dreamcast that was released way back in early 2000. It has quite the legacy, and the game's music is definitely a part of that. The sound director for the game was Takanobu Mitsuyoshi, who you may recognize as this guy. But alongside Mitsuyoshi were 4 other composers, including Yuzo Koshiro, very famous in the VGM community for his work on Streets of Rage. This week we're looking at one of Koshiro's tracks from the Shenmue soundtrack. This song is called Rain. It's a very short solo piano piece, about a minute long, but there's a lot of neat stuff going on here. In particular, there's a lot of 7th chords. If you're new to 7th chords, this might give you a good introduction on how to use them in a piece. We start in common time in the key of C. You can already tell this is an extremely simple arrangement. For some reason, I'm really drawn to that. I like simple and minimalist things, so that kind of stuff is really cool to me. So let's take a listen to the first 4 bars, and then we'll go back to bar 1 and start from there. So bar 1 here, we have F and A played in the left hand, and the first note of the melody is E. If you understand how 7th chords are built, you might recognize this as an F major 7 chord. It lacks the 5th, which is C, but with 7 chords, you can leave out the 5th in most cases, and the chord will still be recognizable. This helps clear up some of the muddiness that you can get with bigger chords, which is really good for arrangements like this. Another thing I'd like to note is that we're starting on an F chord. In the key of C, F is the 4 chord, so the song doesn't start on the 1 like you might expect. This is very common in Japanese music, so if you listen to VGM enough, you'll start to recognize the sound. Anyway, we have this 4-note melody here that starts on E, moves down a 2nd to D, up a 4th to G, back down a 3rd to E. This pattern is repeated in the 2nd bar, just a note lower, although C moves up a 5th to G instead of a 4th to F. Why G instead of F? Probably because F wouldn't have sounded quite as nice over this chord. But in any case, the rhythm is the same, and the intervals are roughly the same. The reason I point this out is to say that this 4-note pattern is kind of the main idea for this whole section here. It's repeated multiple times in different arrangements of notes, and it's a good way of creating something very memorable out of a single idea. Am I getting too theoretical about my music theory? Probably so let's get back to talking about chords. In bar 2, we have E on the bass and G above that. In the melody, the first note is D. This is enough to call it an E minor 7 chord, right? Not quite. You'll notice the melody utilizes C rather than B, which is the 5th of E minor 7. This is actually indicating a C chord in first inversion. E minor and C are very, very similar chords, but they have a little bit of a different feel to them, with C sounding much more conclusive in this key. It takes the open-ended sound of that F chord and lays it to rest with D in the melody right here, telling us we're not quite done yet, we're going to keep moving. Also, you don't need to take every single note into account when naming a chord. Like every single note of the melody here. It's just that C is such a clear indicator of a 1 chord here rather than E minor 7, because in the key of, over an E minor 7 chord, C is one of the avoid notes. It's one of the notes that you kind of want to leave out of the picture. And so the fact that C is present but B is not gives us a much more of a C feeling than of an E minor chord. Anyway, moving on. Next we have a D minor chord, where the 7th is played once in the melody and drops down to B. It's a nice kind of dissonance, and the presence of the tritone between F and B sets up the resolving C major 7 really nicely, very similar to how the 5 chord works. In fact, you might consider this a a rootless G7 chord right here. It might also be a good thing to note that any of the long held out notes here are chord extensions, either the 6th, 7th, or 9th of the chord underneath, which lends itself well to this relaxed feel we've got going on here. Like over this, the 4 chord, we have E, which is the 7th. Over this this C over E chord, we have D holding out here, which is the 9th. Over this D minor chord, we've got B being held out, which is the 6th, like a D minor 6 kind of sound. Over the C chord, we have A holding out here, which is the 6th. So they're all chord extensions. They're the long held out notes, and that really lends itself to this kind of sound really well. So let's listen to the next 4 bars. This is very similar to the first 4 bars. What we have really is an 8-bar section divided into 2 phrases. I hesitate to call the first 4 bars the antecedent and the next 4 the consequent, because I'm not terribly familiar with classical terminology, and I believe the antecedent is supposed to end with a half cadence, which this one does not. In any case, there are 2 phrases here, and it's a nice way of taking this little seed of an idea and creating an entire section based around it. So with that in mind, bars 5 and 6 are exactly the same as the first 2 bars of the song. Bar 7 is almost exactly the same as bar 3, the same rhythm and everything, but we go up from A to B rather than down from C to B, and there's a scale climb up here rather than kind of going up and then resolving back down. You also note we have a 2-5-1 right here. We have D minor, G7, and C, which gives some finality to this section, and it's kind of wrapping up this 8-bar section, and it's like, okay, we're done here. We're going to move on to a new part now. So here, we enter the B section of the song, and I'll let you listen to the first 4 bars of that. Things get a lot more simple and straightforward here as far as the chords go. The 7ths are dropped, and we're left with basic triads. The melody gets higher as the emotion kind of raises a bit, and to complement that, there's a bit of a tonal shift here from C to A. In other words, the first half of the song, C was the tonal center. Everything kept resolving back to C. And in this second half, we've shifted our focus to the relative minor, which is A. It's a very subtle change, which is natural since the C major and A minor scales have the same notes, but it helps direct the feelings being expressed. So this whole B section focuses on A rather than C. So here, that 4-note melody we had going on before is dropped, and we have a slightly more complicated one over a basic F, G, A minor progression. What I really like is this part here where D is played over the melody, in the melody over the A minor chord right before moving up to E. This D sounds very rich, I think, over the 1 chord here, and it just hangs on that just for a moment before going back up to E, back up to one of the chord tones. And I think it's really nice. In bars 11 and 12, we've got a similar progression: D minor, E minor, and A minor. This is literally the lowest part of the piece, in my opinion, emotionally, but also just in terms of the notes themselves. And I think the progression expresses that. D minor and E minor fulfill the same roles as the F and G chords did back in bar 9, setting up for that A minor chord. But contrary to the upward movement earlier from that climb up from F to G to A, we have D to E, and then it just drops down to A, and it's all sad and stuff. This is the only point in the song where we have that clear 1-5 interval right here, with no third in the middle to lighten things up. It's a lot heavier sounding. What's also nice is the return of this melodic pattern that we saw back in bar 10, where a chord extension is played over the A minor chord and it's brought up to one of the chord tones. We have a B, which is the ninth of A minor, going up to C. And it's a nice callback. I think it even though that was just 2 bars ago, I think it's just a nice callback, and that's kind of a theme that's been going on in this song. It's very good composition, I'll tell you that much. Now for the last 4 bars of the piece. I'll let you hear those, and we will discuss them. So bars 13 and 14 are exactly the same as in bars 9 and 10, which follows that form from the A section of the song. In bar 15, the melody is almost exactly the same, save for this last note here, which is building up to the ending. But we have, in the harmony, we have F and G chords instead of D minor and E minor. If you compare those two, you can really hear the difference they make. Let me find just those 2 sections and play them for you. So here's bar 11, where we have D minor and E minor being played under this melody. And over here in bar 15, we have F and G. I think the F and G chords here are a lot more driving, and it pushes the song forward more so than the D minor and E minor did over here, which were intended to kind of bring everything down, pull everything down for a moment. And here we're kind of raising up to this A minor chord. So in keeping with the theme of simplicity, the F and G resolves with no flourishes, just a simple high A over a minor third on A here. Many of the songs on the Shenmue soundtrack are filled with huge chord extensions and just a wave of sound with lots of instruments filling up the harmonic space. As much as I enjoy that, Rain really stuck out to me. It's also not the only solo piano piece on the soundtrack, but its simplicity is markedly different to those other tracks. In spite of its simplicity, there are some really great techniques here that keep the song interesting and memorable. There's a careful, calculated use of repetition, 7th chords, which really enhance that kind of soothing tone, and a straightforward melody that rises and falls right where it needs to express the feels. All the feels. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this analysis, and I hope you learned something from it. I went pretty in-depth here, probably more than I needed to, but I feel the need to make the reminder that music is about expression, and you don't have to be thinking quite this hard about it when you're actually composing. If you take the time to learn some of these practices now and some of these techniques now, you'll be able to adopt them into your own writing and arranging so that when you have something you want to express, you're able to do this kind of subconsciously and go through these processes to write something that really stands out and is really cohesive. So that's all for this week. If you want to study this score yourself, you can head to the website at ongakuconcept.com and check out the PDF file. Thanks for watching, and I will see you guys next week.